Hello and welcome to Tutorial 2 for INDD 5960. On this tutorial we're going to be focusing on the basic concept of sequential scripting. So we're going to build a simple game, a memory game not unlike Simon. And let's see, we'll load up the map here real quick so we get an idea of what we're shooting for. So this is the Simon map. It has actors in it that allow the player to begin in a specific spot, to hit triggers so that our script knows what's going on with the player's activity in the game. Path points. These path points we're not using for pathing for the player or for AI. For right now we're just using them as something to link our audio to. And then we also have basic shapes for the environment, and most importantly, here under the K, this button right here, the Kismet button, you'll see the script that we're getting ready to write. While it might seem like a lot right now, it really isn't. It's the same thing over and over, and it's the same couple of statements, and I'm going to make this as simple as possible for you. So we're going to break this tutorial into two pieces so that we can just focus on this in tutorial 1, which you'll be able to knock out in a heartbeat, and then in tutorial 2 you'll be able to knock out this. And this is what makes our game a game. Alright, we're going to start with a new map. Hit blank map. Alright, here we are. So someone was asking about the red cube. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. For right now, this is the builder brush. It allows you to model things here within the engine, but we're not going to mess with that quite yet. So you can ignore it, or you can hit the B key at any time to just quit drawing it. So I'm going to hit the B key to get rid of it. Our content browser here, and we have our brand new IND 5960 sample package built for the September release of Unreal instead of the December one. So this package will work nicely with the September release and will allow you to actually export something to an iOS device. Alright, so there's a few additions to the package. All the shapes are the same. The shapes have been given new UV coordinates for light maps. And there's some colored materials and textures in here that we'll be using, as well as some sounds that we'll be using. Right now all we care about is the box, because we want a ground floor. So we're going to grab that box, drag it in here. Alright, so there's the box. We're going to put that box in the middle of the scene at 0, 0, 0. Just double clicked it so that I could get its properties. And then underneath its properties, we're going to take a look at movement here, not display, but movement, location, and we want you at 0, 0, 0. This is the center of our world, and just makes life a lot easier if you're working from here, at least on these simple maps. Alright, now that's a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot cube. We're not going to get very far with it, so we're going to want a little more real estate to run around on. We'll scale this up by, say, give us a lot of real estate to run around on. Scale it up by not 1,000 but 100. There we go. So we'll just right click anywhere, and we're going to add an actor, add light point. So again, the editor immediately switches to lit mode, and we're going to move our light where we want it. Say, switch to the quad view by clicking that top right corner. That way I can check out my top view here. And we'll get our light, kind of sort of in the middle of the scene. Something like that is good. Alright. Alright, so we got our light in here. Now we're talking a little bit about lighting in class. So what we're looking at right now is dynamic lighting. These pixels are being figured out on the fly. This is costly lighting. It's performance inhibitive, and it's just absolutely not going to work on our iOS game. So with any of the assets that are in the package now, you can actually assign proper light maps to them. So open up the properties on the shape, and you will see here that we can now toggle on or toggle off override light map resolution. The light map resolution by default on any of these shapes is 32 by 32 pixels. It's not a whole lot of resolution for a light map. So, especially since we've scaled this box up to 200 feet by 200 feet, we need a light map that has enough pixels to actually look halfway decent on 200 feet by 200 feet. By override light map resolution and setting this to 1024. So that gives us 1024 pixels spread across 200 feet and one axis. Alright, now that we've done that, let's see what the result is by building the lighting. Alright, for right now we'll just leave it in production, and away we go. Alright, so our lighting is built. We got a couple of errors, but nothing to worry about right this second. It says paths need to be rebuilt. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when we place our path points, the little apples in the scene. And then map should have kill Z set. And we'll talk about that at the same time when we do the apples. So let's close that up. Hey, and this is what our lighting looks like baked into the scene. So this is cheap lighting, something we can actually put onto the iPhone, where we're not calculating the lighting every frame, every pixel. So let's grab some cylinders, because that's what we wanted our players to be standing on. That's our cue for them. Drag that guy here into the scene. Now we want this big enough for people to stand on. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it. Alright, by 10. There we go. So here is one of our daises that people are going to stand on. Switch to the top view so we can arrange these appropriately. Alright. So we'll set one there. This can be pretty loose. It can be different shapes. I am not worried about that. All I care about is getting all the assets in the scene and function. That's our only real concern right now. Alright, so there we go, tighten it up a little bit. Alright, so then we had a fifth that sat in between. That was our starting position back here. Make this a little bit larger so that people recognize that as the start and don't confuse it with the rest of the shapes in the scene. Pull it back like that. Alright, now we're going to switch back to perspective. Alright, so I think this will work okay. Make folks run a tiny bit further. Now, let's take a look at it. Lit. Yeah, now, this is being lit with our pre-built lighting. This is being lit per pixel in real time. The difference is evident. So you can see the pixels changing, gradating in color as it bleeds out into the scene of the texture. Now the pixels in this texture, the texels, are much larger than the actual pixels here on this dynamically lit object. So we'll want them to, all of these to also have an appropriately sized light map. So click all four of those guys, hit F4, static mesh actor, static mesh component, override light map resolution. Alright, and for now, 64 is going to do the job for us pretty well. Now this big guy back here, the large one, we'll click him, override light map resolution. He's 4 times larger than the rest of these guys, so we'll give him 256 pixels to work with. Okay. Now we could go ahead and build lighting now to see the result, but I'm going to trust that I put this together well enough for now. Right now I'm more concerned with the depth, or I should say the height of each of these diodes. Now, our character can really only step up 16 units a foot. So we want to make sure that each of these are no more than 16 units up off the floor. So I'm going to pop over here to the front view. My grid down here in the bottom right is set to 16. And the snap is toggled on. So we can see there's a block every 16 units. So clearly my cylinders here are sitting 32 units up off the floor. So I'm going to grab them and drag them down. All right, so now everybody should be able to walk up and down on them. And the majority of the scene, of course, is just gray. Now, if you'll remember the video of the Simon game, now we also had these diodes changing colors. Now, they weren't actually changing colors. It's all I was actually doing was switching between a copy of this diode with a different material on it. Grab all four of those guys, and we can just Control C, Control V, and we have created duplicates. So they're in the same location. Hit Control Z, get them right back where they were initially. So they're in the exact same spot, which is basically what we want, because we want the player to perceive that this is a piece of the floor that has changed colors or lit up. Now, that's great for what the player's seeing. That's terrible for us in terms of working, because then we're having a tough time picking one cylinder from the next, because they're sitting exactly in the same spot. So just to give myself a little help here, I'm going to change the depth of this cylinder by scaling it to 4. So now it's much, much taller. Go ahead and pull it down so that the tops and the sides matches. And so now what we have is a large cylinder that will be the one that we turn on when we want the color to glow, and a small gray one that we just aren't going to touch. We'll toggle this one as well, but we're done with that guy. All right. So now we have 2 cylinders in the same place. The deeper ones are the ones that we're going to assign materials to that give them their color. Okay, so we're going to go down here to our content browser, check out the materials I've set up, and I've put some colored materials in here. These materials are not going to behave the same way. The colored ones are not going to behave the same way as the default to gray material. The default to gray material is simply diffuse and using the iOS specular with a specular color of white. And so it is it's a very simple material. Now, what I've done differently on the colored materials here is to make them glow here within their properties. I have added the blue color that I'm using for their diffuse. I have also added to their mobile emissive texture. So emissive means self-lit. It is a glow, a light source, and so this actor, this material is going to behave as if it is a light source. So it's going to take this blue and not calculate lighting for the surface, and instead just behave as if the blue coming from the surface is the light for this object. All right, so that is why these materials act the way they do. You don't need to do anything here other than select the material, know where they are here, and then let's get over here so we can actually see our map. Alright, so we're going to grab this cylinder and then right-click it, and from here we can set material type right here under Materials, and Assign from Content Browser is what we're looking for. So I have the blue picked over here in the Content Browser. So Assign from Content Browser. Bam. Alright, now we want this guy to be red. So right-click him, Materials, Assign from Content Browser, red. Want this one to be yellow. Alright, Materials, Assign from Content Browser. And this one's green. Right-click, and Materials, Assign from Content Browser. Alright, let's make sure those are assigned. Just switch to lit mode, and there they are. Okay, so you'll see some flickering. That's because we have polygons sitting in exactly the same space. So our video card is thrashing, trying to figure out who's the right face to display and who's the wrong face. And we're okay with that for right now, because our script is going to handle toggling these on and off, and it's going to make certain that they are never drawing at the exact same time. Alright, now we've got all of that set up. The next thing we know we want is a specific place for the player to always start for each match. Now the way that is handled here in Unreal is with a player start. So you can right-click anywhere in the scene, preferably where we want the player to start, and go to Add Actor and Add Player Start. So before we talked about how you could right-click anywhere and choose Play from here and just start running around the level. Now that's great for testing your own work, but that is not how the actual players ever dropped into a level. Instead, they always begin at a path point or at a player start. So we're going to drop this in, and our script is going to use this to make sure our player always begins here and concludes here. You might have noticed when I first dropped this player start into the scene, it gave me a bad size icon. It's telling me that it's too close to the floor to be a proper point to calculate from for the player's placement. So I just tugged it up a little bit, 16 units, and now it is satisfied. Alright, so no problem there. Now we know that we're going to want to emit sounds from each of these, because we always want in any of our games redundant clues, motion, color, and audio, because everyone learns differently, and we need to make sure that that we can appeal to different people's ways of learning. So, alright, what do we need here? We need a path node. A path node is like a player start, only it is simpler. It is not used as the place at which a player begins from, but is it's a node used for verifying that a location is appropriate for a player or a bot, an AI to travel to. It's also used for lots of other things within the engine. It's just a simple point to use to reference a specific location within a scene. In our case, we're going to use it to play audio from. Alright, so we've got one set up there. Pop into the top view. Whoops. Get that guy centered up. Of course, I'm using the Alt key to duplicate these guys, just like we did in the previous tutorial. I'm going to assume that you guys are already doing that without even thinking about it. Alright, so we're in pretty good shape. Back to perspective. Alright, we have most of what we need to actually start writing this script already. Okay, now we are missing one last very important part of this scene. So we know that we are going to change color and change audio on each of these circles to tell the player where to go. But how do we know when they get there? That's the real question here. How do we know when the player has succeeded? Well, the script, of course, will handle what happens after this has been verified. And the script will sit there and wait until the player has reached the right location. But we need something to tell us that they've gotten there. What we're going to use is a trigger. So that B key that you hit at the beginning of the tutorial, tap that again so we get our red box. That's what we want to see. We are going to create a cylinder for each of these cylinders. That is a trigger cylinder, a dynamic trigger, and it never renders in the game and is used purely for our scripting purposes. So let's go to the top view. There's our what it is called the builder brush. Again, this is not an actual mesh or anything in the game. This is just a tool for modeling stuff within Unreal. A tool for modeling in it's a type of surface called a BSP surface. It's a binary space partitioned surface. So it's not a 3D model like you're used to at a 3D studio or something. It is surfaces generated through through a lot of complex math. Okay, so let's make this a cylinder. Click. Now we got a cylinder. You'll see over here under brushes you can change that brush to lots of different shapes for roughing out levels. These shapes are really built for roughing out shooter levels, since that's what the engine was originally intended for. But for us, all we need is a cylinder. Now, this is not the cylinder shape or size that we need. So we're going to right-click this guy, and it's going to give us some options for changing the cylinder size. Instead, build them through the properties so that the mesh that is built is actually using the exact units that you have given to it. The BSP can be problematic. It can crash maps if it has been scaled or skewed or edited in such a way that the math I was referring to earlier starts to fail on us. So we're going to be very careful anytime we're building triggers or using BSP. In this case, we're going to stick with a depth of 256, so that's 16 feet. That's more than enough to, that's the height of our cylinder here, and more than enough to figure out if a player is in the right location. The outer radius is, you probably want something more like, well, not 320, let's try 160, looks about right. Match this up. Yeah, that's where we want to be. And then we're not going to be worried about inner radius because this is not a tube, it's just a cylinder. And then sides, we'll give it 16 sides so it matches our shape here a little bit better. All right, so we're lined up in the right area. Again, this is the builder brush. The reason it's called that is because it is not the actual shape. You have not made the trigger. You have not made the shape yet. It's think of it more like a template that you are using to build the shape. So, all right. That looks like it's the right size. That's what we need. What we need to do now is take this builder brush and actually produce the shape we want from it. And in this case, this shape is going to be we know it's a cylinder, but the style of shape is a trigger volume. So down here on the right, you'll see volumes. And then you can click this to create just a generic volume. But that is not what we want. What we want to do is right-click this, and we are going to choose Dynamic Trigger Volume. The second we click this, a dynamic trigger volume has been made in the exact same space using the exact same points as this red cylinder here. I'm going to hit the B key, turn it off, and there you go. That is our trigger. This is exactly what we wanted. All right, so now, just kind of nail this point home, we're going to turn that builder brush back on, select it, top view. Well, here, we'll do this instead. We're going to move that builder brush over here and give ourselves another dynamic trigger. Dynamic trigger volume. Bam. Alright. Another. And if you're thinking right now, well, why don't you just duplicate the trigger volume? Then you're clever. You absolutely can do that. But just to make sure that everybody understands that what the Builder brush does is produce a template that we then build another shape from, I'm doing it this way. Oops, there we go. Right-click volumes. Dynamic trigger volume. Alright. So, in the scene that you guys saw from the video, there were pyramids that I had used as arrows to point at the cylinders, some steps that I had built around the dais here. All of those additional shapes, they're up to you to add. Build the scene however you wish to make it clear to a player that what they're doing is going from circle to circle. Alright, so I believe we have everything we need in our scene at this point. So let's build some lights, play the scene, make sure it works, and address any errors that pop up. So first off, let's go ahead and build paths. So right here next to the light bulb, you'll see build paths. This is going to create data within the scene that draws lines from my start point to my apples, and it tells the pathing system within Unreal where people in AI may go. It's also going to show us where we have some errors. So map needs lighting rebuilt. Well, we already knew that because we added shapes, changed their light maps, and haven't rebuilt the lighting for them. And then the other error here is map should have kill Z set. Kill Z is simply the height at which a player is automatically killed once they've fallen off the map. Anybody that has played Quake, Unreal, any old shooter knows that you fall off the map and at some point you die. So we'll set that real quick underneath View, World Properties, Zone Info. There's a lot of properties under here. And a lot of opportunity to mess up your map. So let's keep this simple. Zone info. Now, kill Z is what the path creator is complaining about. We know that our floor is sitting at 0, 0, 0. You're actually standing about a foot above it because the box is centered at 0, 0, 0. So just to be on the safe side, we will set this for negative 512 units. So that's going to be 32 feet below sea level for us. That will satisfy that error. Let's build it again. Alright, all we need to worry about now is lighting. So let's build our lighting. This time we're going to build it production. Use light mass. That's what gives us our nice baked lights into this scene. Build BSP is not really an issue right now. You can leave it as is. We do not really have any BSP in the scene except for these triggers, and these triggers are not going to be, no lighting information is going to be built for them because they're never rendered. And then build static meshes is what most of our scene is using, and we definitely need that. Here we are. Lighting is built and with no errors. We're ready to go. We are, now's a good time to go ahead and save your map. Being a little too cavalier here. You guys should be saving often. So we'll save it as Simon 2 here. Unreal absolutely will crash on you often, as will any game editor. So last time we just right-clicked and hit play from here. Go ahead and give that a shot. Oh, here we are standing in our world. Now, if your play from here doesn't look quite like this with the mobile controls, I'll cover that here in a minute. All right, but right-click play from here, as we discussed earlier, is not the way our player is going to load into the scene. They're going to load in from this marker right here. And you'll notice on the marker that there's an arrow on it already facing the way we need it to face. Now in future levels, future maps that you're working on, you might have to rotate this so that the player spawns into the game facing the way you want them to. Now, to make sure that this is actually loading me up there, instead of hitting right-click play from here, we are going to click this button right here. Play this level in an editor window. There we go. So this is how the game would play for a player right now. And it appears to be working pretty good. Okay, so now on a final note, to kind of close up part one of this tutorial, we are working with the goal of delivering our content to an iPhone or an iPad. And I have been building all the assets so that they will, and I'm building all the tutorials so that they work on the iPhone or the iPad. Now, you might have noticed that I have some mobile features turned on. The reason they're turned on is because of this button right here. This is the mobile emulation button. Now, this is what the game looks like with that turned off. And then with this turned on, it gives you a preview, we'll call this a guesstimate of what the game would look like on an iOS device. Feel free to go ahead and toggle this on. Know that when you toggle it on, that the software will probably lock up for some number of seconds or minutes. It's compiling shaders and getting the scene ready to render correctly for a mobile device. So if you click this, don't immediately assume that something bad happened. Instead, click it, get up for a second, walk away, let Unreal think, and then come back after a few minutes. And if everything's moving along fine, then it is finished creating your mobile scene. All right, last but not least, we have a series of mobile buttons right here. This one is for actually exporting your content to your iOS device. Don't sweat this yet. There is key and certificate information that you have to generate through Apple before you can export to your iOS device. And that is something that we will all chew on later. But here we can use this button. You can use a mobile previewer. Right-click this little iPhone with the green play button, and you have some options in here. So you want to set it for whatever device you plan on testing on, or set it for if you are building something that is iPhone or iPad specific. You would want to go ahead and make those choices here. So I want a preview for an iPhone 4 at this resolution. And then I want my iPhone 4 features, and then it's going to play in landscape. Just a heads up, I have yet to have portrait work, so let's keep all projects landscape for now. All right, hit play. It's going to ask if it can save some packages because it is going to do some shader compiling. All right, and there we go. This is our mobile previewer. That's what those glowy surfaces look like, supposedly, on a mobile device. All right. Now, it might play a little bit slow, especially if you're working on a machine with an AMD card. But it does come as close as you can on the PC to demonstrating what your game would look like on your iPhone. This is good enough for now. All right, so thanks very much for sitting through this. Hopefully it takes you no longer than an hour to get your scene put together. Go ahead and knock this out, please, because the next tutorial will take a little bit more figuring for you. Thank you very much.